thank you so much for hosting us, Andy and Peter and all the gang, and thank you so much for coming out to this amazing space. I feel as if I don't know.
I think we've fallen down the rabbit hole.
Some kind of hole, I know. Like the chandelier, Alice, yes.
Yeah.
So from Liminal, from their collected piece, we thought of how to handle that literally. So we came up with a joint poem called Literally. And Performing Women, which I would love you to buy, is about sound poetry. So my portion of the piece of the evening is partly sound poetry, starting with Litter Alley.
Lit. 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 Litter. Litter. Literally.
Split the liminal between liminal and lore along the shore. And you,
with purse blue lids flutter as water expels salt in winter.
Purse your lips in the very cold and exhale the breath to warm into
this undulation. Your head turns to watch crepe turns litter the stern landscape.
With their their piercing screech hits the wave with its own momentum.
Cilium echoes in interstitial spray as the cotillion of migrants shrill overhead.
On their way warm, leaving beneath all impetus of movement throughout.
Range mountains. You close your lids and ruminate the smell of imminent storm.
Sturm and drang might it be, as the drag of probability weighs you down along
the Atlantic line. You sift between currents in destructive permanence as gyres of plastics.
Creep unholy expanse over the surface, riding the surf like tiny demonic dolphins.
Or Martian buoys. You whirl in oceanic decay before slopping back onto the bay shore.
To collapse in the space between, interregnum saved by the imperfect sensation
of shortened day as season replaces season. Your jetsam limbs stretch over the rocky pall.
You succumb to a sudden burst of sun that will overcome your pallor through spring's thin mist. This is from, we should introduce. This is from, this is so planned, you know. This is from the next book that I'm launching in April. I just can't remember the name. Local Heroes. How could I forget? And the pieces that I'm going to read are about Teresa Harris. And they're mostly pieces that were not dramatic, so they weren't used in the play. The sesquicentennial as celebrated in Sowesto. Yeah, let's celebrate 150 years of Canada. But what about all the omissions in unceded territory? How can we reconcile Confederation's white face with the Indian Act's ongoing sad consequence? What about all the immigrants since? Who to celebrate? We have our flag along with our beaver and moose. Guess who's missing? Guess who came before us? Whose terrain are we on? Indigenous voices declare. We, First Nations, Chippewa of the Thames from the Anishinaabe Nation, we are here. We, Oneida Nation of the Thames of the Haudenosaunee, Six Nations, we are here. We, the Munsee Delaware Nation, belong to Lenni Lenape Nation, we are here. The Attawandaron and Neutral people once lived on these traditional grounds for hunting beaver along this river you call Thames, the Tranche, the French, the Trench. Our antlered river, the Askinissippi, is no ditch. We've been here since glaciers retreated to create the river. Our people thrived along musk ox and caribou herds, mammoths and mastodons for more than 13,000 years. We're not going anywhere. You settlers, newcomers, where do you belong? Who does this land hold? Let the earth claim her own, those who will continue her care. Canada embraces both local and global, all who embrace her as theirs in this beloved place, here.
So Penn and I chose our poems in this set, I suppose, so that they correlate with one another. The next two poems that I will be reading examine London, Ontario, and specifically the corner of Dundas and Richmond as a site of colonial violence. Like other poems that I will be reading tonight, these poems and the thematic elements, I suppose, examine the natural world in relation to colonization and other social issues. Four corners made bare on Dundas and Richmond. Crossroads are contour lines that fracture native hands. Root for half-smoked fag on piss-stained sidewalks, sticks over primordial land that grows out, equinoctial before them colonials took it. Roads that spew out black fat onto flaxen farmland, sees them smoke green up on them four corners. No wampum but Richmond Row. Acres anchor, borders bank, for selenite skull, lavender pagan Christ. A foul witchcraft for the white man, bitumen, bito-human, is black as muck. Below black wrought belly of market tower, talks about London handshake. Smacks sagging leather jowls, alky, pupo, blood, shot, blackie. Man, just don't open them. As our black eyes, I watch cutter sever whiter skin and frigid whiteout skein, the Sou'westo Indian takes the knife and shoves it in, she says, reveals her own pox from the methadone a year before then. Talks of a stabber in the foe. I was chased by a tall dog man with a bottle of Jimmy through the Victoria Park. I got my lavender quartz crystal, sage smudge, mohawk crud, know which man is gonna get a taste from this bum blood.
On what is perceived. This is one of the takes of Teresa Harris, who grew up in Eldon House, very close to downtown London. And she was the youngest of 12. She escaped London and fled around the world to become one of the great Victorian adventurers and explorers and surveyors. But she kept some of her colonial values as instant in this picture, which is the cover for Local Heroes. I always pass it around actually because it's such an amazing picture. Just take a look at the camel driver, and the look on her face. She's wearing Arab clothes over her 1870 crinolines. How proudly she would have donned this rough burnous over her crinoline cage, in the way she adopted cultures as overlay. Teresa displayed her daring in a carefully withheld posture of glee, cloaked for the moment like a native. The camel would have stooped for her. Its driver would have offered her hands as stirrup to mount her behemoth. She would have clasped the saddle pommel to keep upright as the camel rocked to its feet. It probably spat indignantly at the flick of its driver's whip, but rose with peculiar elegance to stand at his command. Teresa could not know her proud stare at the unseen photographer matched the camel's arrogant glare. A secret triumph apparent in upturned lips. She would not notice the driver's scowl, nor wondered why he glowered so. Was it the long wait for the camera to take, or a larger colonial weight on Egypt's fellaheen? It would be decades before Teresa could recognize equality among humans. Animals were easier to love, since she turned to pets for comfort, those beneath her in the family hierarchy.
So the next two poems are from a series that my sister Emma Croll-Baehre and I wrote in collaboration with immigrants who have come to London, and the work explores specifically their experience of the borderland, the in-between between their home country and London, Ontario. Nation mother murmurs of refuge beyond Peshmerga being, purges custom to bring herself to freedom from desert land below the abundant Kanata. She asks why new births must resist foreign teaching, native each moment. Nation mother lowers brown palms, fastens to flat seasons. Each moment, chrome soil spills heavy. Electricity buzzes in two-bedroom. We shuffle together as smooth a fish shoal for safety. Our dozen adolescent limbs clamber in winter room. Is this mundan savida easy for you, Tia? Slipping from the infinite of Porto waters to muddied Ascanesepe, our fine, pilchard mouths latch crowned moraines.
And from Afghanistan, we go to St. George Littledale's eulogy for Teresa. He was 12, to her pride, 12 years younger than she, and a very noted explorer that became a conservationist. So he's a good guy in the end, but they were surveying in Afghanistan and that area of the world in disputed territory, and reported back to the Queen and the King their findings. So this is his eulogy. Teresa was my constant companion, enduring all our travails with as much fortitude as any man. In those bygone Victorian days, she was easily my intrepid equal, She eluded any ordinary boundaries for a woman of her time and position in colonial London society. The botanical specimens she brought back to our English shores were just as valuable as my zoological trophies. How she loved categorizing them, naming new ones, carefully preserving them. Our little conservatory here in the Berkshires is full of plants she coaxed from seed. Although, as you know, most of our prizes have been given to the zoological gardens for all to enjoy. Without her, my excursions may have been wilder, but they wouldn't have been organized. She brought comfort to our nomadic adventures, wherever they took us. She ensured there would always be good Darjeeling tea and fresh scones no matter where. She was my comfort, my solace, my joy. What woman of her breeding would have dared to scale the mountain passes that we managed? What other Victorian woman would dare to play the great game, trespassing into disputed territory so boldly? Together we measured, we carefully noted the geography, we surveyed, and we brought back the information to the Crown for the greater glory of England. We were not deterred by the Russian bear, the Chinese panda, the Tibetan yak. We spied on them all. I can tell you now that the empire is largely a pale shadow of itself among friends and family. We were the greatest English explorers of our time, traveling further into Asia than any other Westerners. Our names, our exploits may yet be known, but not them. At the king's wishes, we did not publish our findings because to do so might have put further exploration in jeopardy, might have prevented further travel, further visas. Privacy suited us. We had each other and we knew what we had accomplished. So we kept our knowledge in papers given to the Royal Society. Teresa cautioned me to keep such close counsel. Her gift for secrecy came, she said, from being the youngest of 12 in an age where girls were carefully guarded. She would escape outside into the wide, wild Canadian forest at her back door. She always did like getting out from under. So I salute with a fond farewell the dearest, closest wife this old adventurer could ever have imagined. Sail on, beloved Teresa, into the great unknown with the same feisty, determined spirit you have always shown. I know you will never waver, but I hope you wave from time to time. I'll feel you, darling.
Speaking of colonialism, colonization, this next poem, The Basin Woman, is in response to a novel by Jean Rhys in which a young woman in the late Victorian era immigrates from the West Indies to London, England. I won't give too much away. This is my response to the novel. A basin woman bumbles and bungles with wet nose below brown edge of planter nation, as some wood louse and her roly-poly marsupium plunges bibble into rotted grain. Nation and blood are purple-gray, its curtain figure shiny janitor agape to latch gray sea. Dark voyage to iron palmy. Racing beetles cling to railings per pom-pom to white blots in terrace houses. The gray predecessor with over a dozen hands molts in cold moisture from vellum cuticle. Limey. Lyman. lie men above the brown who serves her family. The basin woman with curd eyes like blind rabbit wriggles and niggles below carob basin. Pot flowers prickle, flicker into gray plenum. Inside the block's tinkery antennae, she carries 24 hours in her belly. The delirium in purple-gray sounds holy, holy, holy. The small crowd with glittering green exoskeleton huddle as exotic fruit shade in the carob basin. Here's to Mappo, shout the crowd in his ring of despair. White blot maneuver, man over the cool gray. As the basin woman extends delicate mandibles to stroke purple spangled sea, blow rings and drift away. Loyal tropic heart, below the purple bay, the Creole can be there and here. Little spiracle covers delicate mandible, fringed bristle slowly vibrates in warm water. She bumbles moonlight bay as she strokes moon belly with one finger, recalls the country where the orange tree flowers. Où fleurit l'oranger. The nation, a transparent mask set in the eternal grimace of disapproval. Plastered in islands, brown specks on glass contorts in light to reveal bellowing Jan. His wide jaw, no eyes or arms, fords the unclimbable. The eternal masquerade, twisting and turning backwards and forwards to keep the horses in the ring. A basin woman with slobbering tongue dances forwards and backwards, counts 1, 2, 3 to the little triangle man. Clings to brown edge of planter nation, cheeps chuck, belly jiggles, black eyes bulge, babbles at the eternal masquerade. Twisting and turning, back and back and back. She feels the sun heat far from the iron palmy in this instant, all over again, all over again.
This is the last poem of the first set, and we'll raise the roof at the beginning of the second set, but this one is an invocation for all the missing women and daughters and sisters and mothers, and it was written for the Circle at Brescia for the 14 women of Montreal, because we're coming close to that day, December 6th. The invocation. Come and say hello, women. The veils are still thin, and we welcome your presence. 14. Plus all the disappeared whom you stand for, as if you were in the prime of life now. As if your daughters bloomed full grown around you. As if your mothers were crying delighted tears. And if you were here to see what has changed and what has not, would you hide your eyes in shame for what has been done and what is not? Come into the light and tell us how you are, as if you have life beyond what we recall. Remember, before this dark December claims its own again. Indulged by books.
So we'll take a 10-minute break from what I forgot to mention in case you haven't already.
Okay.
Such a delight to work with Marta. So this next piece, the Local Heroes, is based in 3 parts. The first part is Teresa poems. The second part is a piece to my father, and the third part is, unfortunately, mostly eulogies to London artists, but not all. And this is a sound poem to which I invite you. And I encourage you, if you are a little timorous, to take one of Peter's ketchup hot salsa chips. They'll open your chest and your mouth and your throat right up. You won't have any trouble emoting with me. And I have enough plants in the audience and at home that I know that we're going to be able to do this wonderfully and create, especially with the acoustics of this interesting room. It's a really, I really like the clarity of the sound here, Peter. It's good. So we're down the rabbit hole, and we are, you can do anything you like, of course, as long as it's loud. And the sentence, or the phrase, is when the heart parts. And you can just go, you can do that.
Or else.
Or else.
Or
Or else.
Open.
Open. I've been wanting for 73 years to say that. But that's not part of the sound poem. You can do when the heart parts, when the heart parts, when the heart parts, when the heart parts.
Are you looking at me because you think it'll be more comfortable for me?
Yeah. Can I say it?
You can say it.
She has a lovely poetic voice, but she's a trained opera singer. And when we were practicing yesterday, she would go, like, but for real, not like I'm the one that the music teacher had to stay in the choir with my mouth shut. My mouth open, but no voice coming out, please.
And then I bailed.
She failed. I said, I'm so disappointed, but truly, I was, because she did the most amazing. Somebody said to me that they really, really liked the cat sounds I was mimicking in the first sounding, but you should hear her cat.
Martha,
Her bird.
let's do it.
Yes.
Let's do it, Martha.
Oh God!
Come up here, and I will do it. Oh, you're there. Fine. You're fit. Okay. I just want. Do you also sing? Do you also? You
No.
probably do. These girls do everything.
Emma's lying. She absolutely does sing. She does opera as well. Just dissociating.
I am not here. I am not here. I am far away. Okay. This is a very serious poem. So, when the heart parts, when the heart parts, when the heart parts, when the heart parts, heart parts, heart parts, heart parts, heart parts, heart parts, heart parts,
When the heart parts, when the heart parts, when the heart parts, when the heart parts, when the heart parts,
when the heart parts, and the heart parts, and the heart parts, and the heart parts come, when the heart parts come, and when the heart parts come, and when the heart parts come, panning. When the heart parts company when the heart parts company when the heart parts company from the heart parts company from the heart when the heart parts company from the heart when the heart parts company from the heart. I've lost you. When the heart parts company from the heart. Oh, it's a poem, you know. When the heart parts company. Oh, I'm actually on page 2. When the heart parts company from the hearth, the heart does not stop.
Below the grinning gator, hot steam rolls out choo-choo from grates. Transatlantic on Dundas Street. Semantic seaman for locomotive stutter. From Newfoundland, he says flatly, and gives me fat forehead kisses. I wants to buy you a beer. Have you gone down to the Grinning Gator? I got no money to go back there, me ducky, he says flatly, and gives me fat forehead kisses. London moves, teeter-totter. Whiskey winds bite alligator eyes red as Blake's devil hand. I ain't no devil, lassie, he says flatly, and gives me fat forehead kisses. By the time he saw my head turned away, and I looked up Richmond for the corona lights to pull me out.
The circle completes, the net connects, and this is one of the eulogies from the 3rd section. It's for Bonnie Bernard, a London writer who I'm sure you've read in good company. She lived on my street for 25 years, so a neighbor. As I perform the scene where Teresa Harris on her deathbed calls for her mother Amelia and drowns of pneumonia, I feel these words as if they were real. I'd chosen the date, March 4th, as the only day in the calendar that is a directive. My friend and neighbor Bonnie Bernard dies of pneumonia in the hospital down our street an hour before my reading, I'm told. Her middle name, Amelia. Her daughter remarks they loved Bonnie's writing, but she was always mother first. Though we discern so little beyond the present, I salute these mothers and daughters. Find balance in accepting when time lets us know that it's up. Such scenes open up to worlds beyond any play. We enter a web of love, loss, and ever more love.
Returning to the Limit All Lives saga. At this border, our utterances sift out as rivers interlock and disperse into the infinite of nations. Bowed low, chrome limbs imitate corpses committed to soil. Melted chrysalises before death flight. We carry our invisible doubles, body politic of the extraterrestrial limit. As we meet the blue frontier, our million eyes tremor in ephemeral quiet.
This one also is from Local Heroes, the 3rd section, but it's for local heroes. Virtue and more. Say that fast. More. How do you say it? More? Mirror neuron. Mirror neurons. As if you are leaping in the air with virtue and moire. As if you were running perfect simulation. Lilt and fly. Figures are skating, whirling to wild quads, like Sufis dancing in dervish reverence. Perfection swirls along an unseen slip of water that allows for glide. Ice 2 inches thick, blades glitter. Fantasy hovers, floats flawlessly, describing meticulous arcs on ice. In air. Geometry touched by magic. Projection spun on glass surface. Nope, they're not hovering in the air. Le Petit Prince and his rose crisscross the ice to mirror our neurons effortlessly after ruthless practice. One haptic system rings in tune with the other, not by happenstance, but by exquisite design, creating the perfect illusion of romance. This pair knows their true trick is always in landing home.
My next 2 poems return to the corner of Dundas and Richmond. I didn't think that I would read the first one, as it's rather depressing. I mean, all of them are relatively depressing, but this one in particular, but I'm going to read it anyways. The poems, like the other ones that I read about Dundas and Richmond, came out of conversations that I had with some of the locals who frequently wander the area, shall we say. At these 4 corners, boundary aliens with glossy lids and chalky cat mouths hang heavy. Pink balloons from Dollarama store on Dundas Street. Clutch led Christmas lights. Green hands beat on a skinny bean prostitutes. North corner in. Cause he's no damn stick man with lead light cripple hands. Mad eyes below Joe Cool's. Cuckoo, cluck, cluck. Don't think he's a fool for getting down on the row. It's just how it goes. At these 4 corners made bare, to watch full stark in half light, old man winter came round to clutch at the calves of drifters in the drafts of day. Light in step is tepid rigor mortis. Ossifies, Stegosaurus, Shagasaur, sure, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Not that I'm complaining or nothing. Carries deer skull in left hand, sheep in a nutter. Not some white cloud, crystal mountain minnow. Round beatings on Bodrin from Value Village sail. Fleabane and rosin eyes twinkle dull in daybreak. Stiffness of death, they say. Beats you breathless. Snorts up into the chest cavity until you can't feel it inside you no more.
When the heart parts. When the heart parts company, when the heart parts company, when the heart parts company, art does not stop.
The second to last poem of the evening is The She-Wolf of Nauheim, in response to a truly bizarre novel called The Good Soldier. Has anyone here read it?
Yes. Ford Maddox Ford.
Yeah, it's truly bizarre. And again, I think it correlates with the notion of falling down the rabbit hole. Anyways, Ford Maddox Ford.
Oh.
Anyways, one character struck me in particular, so this is a response to that. I suppose that I am like she-wolf. Old, beautiful soul dances rawest in its reflection, caught between heavy residential doors and blinding white sun. Abused a witchcraft to fox the man whose appetite is great. Brick pink lids that stun with sinister fire. A beast uses fine hand to catch fish in yellow water. I have watched him kiss with bone lips, sharp tongue marring rose skin, a deep and tranquil lust that catches in the still, consumes its wretched heart. A fierce cat watches an unconscious pigeon in a roadway, hopes to snatch his mangled throat with fat fang. La Louve feeds at night. Cruel-tongued crone with lighthouse eyes, nails that claw at her own face as she feasts on the breast of her lover. I suppose that I am like her. My soul is time that bends sunlit landscape and blackens a man's desire. I tread with dark blue gaze in winter mornings, sorrow that coils my flesh into rippling glaze, cradled in gold reflection, beveled mirror cast by a great parhelion. I thought that I could wile his matchbox eyes, conjure up a double guise with dark hair and same gaze. But she-wolf is an illness wielder, cackles upward to salt moon and hunches low in black shadow, watches water melt and waver. And I am no Isabella, ambered silhouette tucked up beneath gas lamp, some crosswise drive that begets crib death. I suppose that his cold eyes attract ugly things, green candle shades, rot seed in winter rain. A slipshod lush and chintzy white presses his forked tongue to fluttering flame. She cries reedy sound, her voice Delphic, her eyes feline. I suppose that I am like her. My own soul, freed only in its reflection, dances back at me in shy deception. The beast caresses with silver finger an obscure and perplexing pleasure as cat watches writhing pigeon, or perhaps as wolf stalks rabbit. I have watched him taste with reddened gum and blunted tooth terrible paradise, and widen his jaw as some torching fish latches at his own life source.
Diane de Prima, La Loba. Put it on your reading list. For me, it was foxes. Sleepy, sleeping in my mother's lap, nestled. When a fox ran in front of the car, ran and was transfixed by the headlights. Could not escape the trajectory of light, caught turning, head back, tongue lolling as in the pictures of foxes hunted. The eyes like cats catching the light and transmuting it phosphorescent, bouncing it back. Look! He shook his head and ran off into the woods. Finally, I did not wake up. But that night, for nights afterwards, there was a fox in my room, under my bed, in the closet. Mommy, there's a fox in my bed. Make him go away. He was very large, and his coat shot off sparks in the dark. His eyes were lit coals. He had sharp white teeth. He was hungry. He smelled musty. He was prowling. He was growling. The sudden switch of the light evaporated him. I could just catch his tail glimmer away up into the fixture. He would curl behind the light, cunning, until the light was turned out. Then he would continue to search. My father, for comfort, explained that foxes were quite small, really. They were like little dogs, and they were more scared of me than I was of them. Well, I couldn't believe the extent of their fear then. The fox I knew wasn't scared one bit. He was going to eat me alive. Unless I played dead. I froze into the mattress. The folds of the sheet turned marble, a freeze. The fox could not smell out the stiff and still. I could sleep warily. By day, my father used his imagination. Foxes are really tiny, he said. So small, you can hardly see them. That's because you watch from daylight eyes, I thought, and foxes come out in the dark. So small you can hardly see them. Look, there's one now. He followed something flying and cupped it in his huge hands. Slowly he opened them to let me see. It's a fox, he said. They scare easy. Be very quiet. I peered into the dark cavern of his hand. The something nothing was gone, not in the palms hollow, nor the crevices between fingers. Look, there he is, flying. There. I followed his eyes, there darting dubiously, till catching on. Hey, another one! He pointed, exulting. I'll catch it! I squealed and caught it. I got one. The nothing in my hand brushed my skin like a moth's wing, tickling, powder. See? Dad looked in. The fox flowed out and perched atop the china cabinet where no one could reach it. Never mind, there's another. We were all around the room after foxes. They never stayed in my palm the way they did in Dad's. I tried to see their wings. I didn't know foxes had wings. They were all around the room, hovering at the edge of sight and prancing. 2 tiny pairs of eyes glowed from the chandelier. See them now. From the top bookshelves, they were like fireflies whose lights went on, went out. So much fun to read for you. Very receptive people.
Thank you to everyone who showed up.